Hello, you lovely bunch interested in sharing knowledge. I'm really happy to see so many of you here. And let's talk about how to share what's inside of our heads with other people effectively. You know, people are funny animals, funny creatures, because we are a mass of cells governed by a sponge, electrically charged sponge inside of our heads. And we are very, very funny because sometimes we are tempted to believe that the sponge is all there is, that all thinking, decision-making, creativity is limited to that sponge. And sometimes we want to take a piece of our sponge, of what's inside of it, and we want to give it to someone else. We want somebody to share an element of our sponge with us. And what do? Produce reports, write instructions, describe processes, prepare presentations that are packed with details. And we are expecting this other sponge to soak it in. But this other sponge, for some reason, turns into a blob that doesn't absorb anything at all. So if you want to teach and learn effectively, I would like to encourage you to leave the concept of thinking being limited to the sponge and open up to some other areas. We know many things about many things already, right? That's where we are in 2023. But there are still some things we don't know too much about, like gravity or how the brain works. And because we don't know too much about how the brain works, we like to compare it to any machine that is currently most advanced. So in the past, people were absolutely sure that the brain worked like a telephone switchboard or a hydraulic pump. Today, obviously, the brain works like a computer, of course. But is it really so? Like when you think about it, when you take your computer to a forest, does it work in the same way in which it does when you work with it at the office? Other than the battery can die, of course. But let's say it's fully charged. Does anything change in the way your laptop operates in the forest? Not really, right? So maybe let's look at a different metaphor. Maybe the brain is a muscle. You know, you don't use it, you lose it, you exercise it, it grows. But isn't it a little bit too linear? The brain doesn't go from small to big, from simple to complex. It is complex to begin with. And when you learn new things, it doesn't grow in a linear way, in a predictable direction. I like to think of the brain as a magpie. Magpie, you know, this black and white bird that steals everything it finds, a piece of string, a feather, or your wedding ring if you're not paying attention, and it will construct and reconstruct, build and rebuild, organize and reorganize its surroundings by the use of these materials. And no two magpies will ever produce the same outcomes because they will use different materials. And no outcome will remain the same for too long, because there will always be something new that pops up. Isn't it more similar to how the brain operates? And the brain has three favorite areas in which to look for materials. The first area is the body. And when the brain uses the body, works with the body, this is called embodied cognition. The second one is your environment, and this is what we called situated cognition. And the third one is when you include other people, and this is called distributed cognition. Let's look at these areas a little bit closer, and let's start with the body. Sometimes we like to think that the body is just a vehicle that we use to carry the sponge around. But the body has a mind of its own. You want proof? Think about gestures. When you don't remember a word, your gestures will find the word before your brain does, because your body already knows what you want to say. Think about when you're trying to describe a taste to someone and immediately you do this. Or you're trying to describe a quality of something revolving, but you don't remember the word revolving, and your hand goes like this, or both your hands goes like this. That's the body using its own mind. The second proof is your impulses in reaction to different situations, and the impulses come before thoughts and even before emotions, because emotions are actually built from the impulses of your body. And the awareness of these impulses, the ability to recognize them and act upon them, is called interoception. Now, I want you to do one thing for me. You can close your eyes or you can leave them open, whatever you feel more comfortable with, but focus for a moment and please raise your hand if you can feel your heartbeat. All right, thank you. I know that some of you may be surprised by this question, like, what do you mean, can I feel my heartbeat? Everybody can feel their heartbeat. And some of you can be surprised by this question, but in a different way. What do you mean, can I feel my heartbeat? I'm not stressed, I haven't been jogging, I'm just sitting normally, I can't feel my heartbeat. Nobody can feel their heartbeat. And these are two different levels of interoception. Interoception has a different name, and it is intuition. Intuition is the ability to work on your impulses before conscious thoughts come to play. The beautiful thing about it is that you can grow it, but I'll talk about it more in a second. Intuition is a very useful tool for learning because it allows you to quickly recognize patterns and organize ideas and thus remember them better. And you know what distinguishes great stock market analysts from average ones? The ability to act upon gut instinct. Gut instinct, you know, instinct coming from the insides of your body. And this is a beautiful gift that we received from Mother Nature, Mother Evolution, however you call her. But then came this guy, Descartes, and he said, I think, therefore I am, and he ruined everything. He was the first guy in history, the father of modern day philosophy, who drew a thick line between the brain and the body, who drew a thick line between reason, which he considered to be superior, and the natural world, which he considered to be inferior and controlled and dominated by reason. And from that moment on, everything became sponge-centric. But now it's 2023, and maybe, just maybe, we go back to I feel, therefore I am. How much more accurate is this? I feel that I'm alive. One way to practice feeling is a word that you've heard so many times before, and it is mindfulness, especially those mindfulness exercises that include a body scan. And again, can you do one thing for me? If you could put your hands on your lower ribs, just above your waistline. Again, you can close your eyes or leave them open and take a breath. And feel the breath. And feel the breath going straight into your hands. Feel your chest expand as you're exhaling. And feel your ribs collapse as you are releasing the air. And now do one more thing for me. Don't take a breath. Allow a breath. Just let it happen. And this is how you get in touch with your body. This is how you begin to feel that you're alive. And once you feel it, you can start moving. Movement does wonders for learning. It makes you smarter, quicker, more creative. It makes you remember things better. What the heck is it with our obsession to sit still? What the heck is it with our obsession to not move at school? Sit still. When you're on stage, don't move, don't walk around, don't make too many gestures. It doesn't work. Cognitive psychology knows already that moderate exercise makes you smarter and more creative for up to 2 hours after the exercise. Cognitive psychology knows that fidgeting makes you more focused and makes you come up with better ideas. And if you're fidgeting with something that has different structures, different textures, different shape, it can, I don't know, move, click, it makes you smarter. Research shows that if you incorporate dedicated movement to the action that you're learning, you get an incredible memory boost. This is how it works. When you hear something, your ability to remember it, not so good. When you do it, so much better. So declarative memory, not good. Procedural memory, better. When you combine them, so when you hear about something and do it at the same time, you get the enactment effect. And then they can wake you up in the middle of the night and you know it, and you remember it, and you know what's going on. So why not incorporate movement into your learning? One way to do that, simple way to do it, and I'm sure you've all done it in the past, and I'm sure you don't do it so much anymore, is taking notes. And taking notes is something that is situated in both situated and embodied cognition. It's a link between the two. Richard Feynman was once famously appalled by a suggestion of a journalist that he writes a lot because he wants to remember his conclusions, that he comes up with the conclusion in his sponge and then he writes it down to process it better, to remember it better. And he says, no way, I don't have a solution when I begin to write. I write in order to find the solution. Because what your brain can do is less than what your brain can do when it cooperates with the hand and with the eye. As a songwriter, well, I don't have a Nobel Prize like Feynman yet, but I can tell you that when I sit down to write a song, I start writing, I don't know the words that will appear on the page. It's not that my sponge produces the words and then I just note them down. No, when I start writing, the words start flowing. Try it and see how it's gonna work for you. About space, about the situated cognition, I just want to give you a couple of tips on how to use your surroundings to learn more and better. First of all, use nature. We are biologically ill-equipped to perform well in office spaces. We will regulate our emotions and improve our cognition after so little as 20 to 60 seconds outside in the open, surrounded by green. Our pleasure receptors will spike, our rumination cycles will break, and we will have many more and much more creative ideas. Your best ideas will come to you when you actually go for a walk. But if you have to stay inside, make sure, okay, and this is not going to be a popular opinion, make sure that there are walls in there. An open space in an office, of course, is cheaper, but it is better for your brains. You will be distracted in an open space by all the faces you see around you, but by all the voices you hear. When it's speech, 100% you will be distracted. When it's half a log, so half a conversation on the telephone, 100% you will be trying to figure out what the other side is saying. But also, in an open space, you don't have privacy, and you need privacy to take risks. Otherwise, you're under constant social pressure. You're constantly trying to meet expectations, and you're not eager to make bold moves and to try out things that possibly won't work. For that, you need a wall. And when you have these walls, or when you allow your employees to have these walls, let them decorate these walls. Let them put pictures of their family, of their cats. Well, I said family. Why do I repeat myself? Let them put diplomas on walls, or I don't know, a picture from their last holiday in Madeira, or I don't know, some souvenirs that they brought from Mielno, or whatever else they identify with, whatever else that reminds them who they are, because psychological research shows that they will learn more, and they will learn more effectively when they know, when they are constantly reminded who they are. And then about space, use it. You have it everywhere. Use it as much as you can. Stand up from your chair, walk to the wall, put some posters on the wall, take a pen like your children and draw something on the wall. Ask your employer to paint the wall with paint from which your marker can be removed later on. Use it. When you want to invest in better technology, don't buy a better computer, buy a big screen. Or, even better, 3 big screens. Because if your windows, the 100 windows that you have opened, are opened on 3 screens all around you, you will be using your peripheral vision, you will be using space interaction, you will be using movement, and all of these things make you a better learner. And if you invite people to that space, look, you're using 3 areas in which your brain likes to find materials. There is movement, there is space, and there are people. And this is this distributed cognition. And you know, there are 3 ways in which we learn best when with other people. The first way is when we try to teach them. It's the best way to learn something new. Try to teach this thing to someone else. Then argue. When you have to defend your idea, you will come up with all the best arguments. And then exchange stories, because our brains are wired to remember things better when they have a human factor involved and when they have a lot of context. And okay, we have some things in our lives that pretend to be teaching, to be arguing, and to be exchanging stories. For example, you will be writing reports, as I mentioned at the beginning of the presentation. Or you will be making slides, PowerPoint slides, full of information. You're pretending to teach. But either there is no one there on the other side to learn from you, or you don't see that person. Because when you're focusing on how much I can squeeze into one slide, you're not remembering about how much these people can actually process. So you're teaching, but there is no one to learn. Arguing. When you write argumentative essays, when you write, I don't know, blog posts that don't get too much interaction, you're producing arguments, but it's just arguing with yourself. If you're convinced that you're right, there is no one there to challenge you. If you're convinced that a solution is wrong, there is no one there to prove it right. There is no one there to take your argument and say, it doesn't work for me. Can you come up with something else? And exchanging stories, yeah, I'm thinking process descriptions. I'm thinking user manuals. They pretend to be a story because they have a sequence of events, they have a sequence of actions. There is no context, there is no human element, and this means that they are completely incomprehensible. Now, how many of you, just curiosity, how many of you, when you get a new device, you don't even look at the user's manual, you try to figure it out yourself? Of course, somebody said of course. Yeah, of course, because this is a story that you simply cannot comprehend. One thing that beats teaching with no learners, arguing with no opponents, and stories with no context is informal meetings, where you can get together, talk to managers, talk to superiors, talk to like 360 contacts, talk to everyone, exchange gossip. Gossip is a wonderful way to learn because gossip is spicy and you remember it. If somebody tells you the same story in an informal meeting with, you know, all the juicy, spicy details, or they tell you the same story in a formal context where they prepared a formal presentation and they made it look right, which one will you remember better? The one devoid of emotion or the one that really thrilled you and kept you on the edge of your seats? There are other techniques that you can use to, well, get maximum benefits of distributed cognition, and one of them if it works, okay, is apprenticeship. The idea of apprenticeship wasn't created for knowledge work environments, it was created for crafts environment. So there was an apprentice, and they would find a master, and they would spend time at their workshop, and they would observe the master at work, and this is how they would learn, maybe taking small tasks as they go, then bigger and bigger and bigger, until they became masters themselves. In knowledge work environments, what happens more often is that the master, so to speak, prepares a block of knowledge, theoretical knowledge, presents this block of theoretical knowledge from the beginning till the end to the trainee, and then tells them, okay, now go to the job. What would be a better way to do it, perhaps worth trying, is to first model the action to the apprentice. So do it and describe it at the same time. Is it going to be more time consuming? Yes. Does it mean that you're going to show them less in one training session? Yes. Is it more effective? Well, it's the only effective way in which you can do it. Once you've modeled it, you can move to scaffolding. So this is the whole action. Now, I want you to take the tiny piece of this action and perform it on your own. And I will help you deal with whatever problems you come across. Then you go to fading. So you withdraw further and further away from the task and let your apprentice do more and more independently, with every step giving them more confidence and more curiosity about the steps to come. And you know that curiosity is where all the learning comes from. From the moment we are born, curiosity is when the learning happens. Not when somebody tells you, you must know it, but when you tell yourself, I want to know it, it's so exciting. This is when you learn. And then the last stage, coaching. Let them do it on their own and assist them, practically or psychologically, if they have any difficulties. This is all based on our natural instinct to imitate. We imitate from the moment we are born. We learn the language by imitation. We learn to walk by imitation. When we are 9 months old, we will look in the direction in which the adult is looking. We will recognize objects better if we have come across them when with the caregiver than if we were alone. But imitation, well, it doesn't have a very good opinion these days. These days, there is an assumption that with everything we do, we should be original, and this is the fault of the Romantics. Romantics, with their Industrial Revolution, with the invention of print, they decided, okay, no, now machines can do everything so well, and they can do everything so repeatedly, with the same quality, with the same features, that the human value lies in originality. But let's say, for example, you want to deliver a public speech. You can invent a new topic, sure, because the world is constantly changing and there will always be new topics to talk about. But can you really invent a new structure, a structure of a presentation that in the end doesn't boil down to Aristotle? I don't think so, because you would have to invent a new sponge that works in a different way. But in order to imitate well, we have to have someone to imitate from. And the problem here is the curse of knowledge. Experts don't know how much they know. And this was proved in a famous experiment by Chris and Chip Heath at Stanford University, where there was a group of students and it was divided to clappers and guessers. And the job of clappers was to clap a very popular melody with their hands. And the job of guessers was to guess it. The melody was supposed to be super popular, like, I don't know, We Wish You a Merry Christmas, that everybody knows. And this was just a game. The main part of the experiment was that the clappers were asked to predict how many guessers will guess the song. The prediction was about 50%. The actual rate of guessing, 2.5%. Why? Because for the clappers, it was impossible to imagine what it's like to not hear the melody in their heads. And I really want to do this experiment right now, you know? When I look at you, I really want to clap a melody for you. And 100% you know it. If you know it, please put your hand up. Don't say the answer, don't sing it. Just please put your hand up, okay? Okay. Yeah, that would be about 2.5%. You're similar to Stanford University. Okay, let me give you another one so that you don't think like I've chosen some tricky melody. This one I'm sure you know. That lowers the guessing ratio a little bit. Okay, now let me tell you, the first one was, okay, somebody of you guessed it. What was it? Stolat. Now, please listen to it again and put your hand up if now you recognize the melody. Can you hear it now? Okay, the second one, a hit song and a hit movie last year or 2 years ago, Bohemian Rhapsody. Mama, ooh. Can you hear it now? All right. Look what a difference it makes if in your head and mine the same melody is playing. And when you're an expert, remember that your trainees can't hear the melody in your head. You know, expert doctors, surgeons, very proficient surgeons, when you ask them to describe their surgery in detail, step by step, they will omit up to how many % of steps? What do you think? 20? 60, somebody said? 70. Up to 70% of steps. But then they go to the operating theater and they perform the surgery and it's perfectly done and the patient is alive and is healthy and everything has worked well. But imagine an apprentice trying to do the surgery after this description. How to avoid this curse of knowledge, how to overcome it. And I'm really happy that Radek talked about start with what you already do, because I want to talk about start with what your trainee already knows. Elicit from them what they already know. And by the way, ETACT, the strategy that I'm showing you right now, is very often used in medical interviews to make sure that the patient understands what's been told to them. Elicit what they already know. Good, we have our starting point. Tell them a new piece of knowledge. Ask them what they heard. Ask them to repeat to you what you have just told them. Care if they are worried about it, if they find it too difficult, if they find it frustrating or confusing. Counsel, so give them practical, merits-based help if they need it, and then ask them to tell back. So once again, summarize what I've just learned. When you do that, remember that who is standing in front of you is not just a sponge. It's not just a mind. It's a biopsychosocial being. It's a being that has a body, that has emotions, and that has environment that it exists in. And the better this being feels when learning, the more effective learning is. Fortunately, you have pearls. Pearls means partnership first. We're in this together. We're going to do this together. Empathy. Listen actively. Lean towards the person that you're talking to. Nod. Show that you understand. Look them in the eye. Ask confirming questions. Affirmation. Tell them they're doing a good job. Praise them. Tell them that you're proud of them. Tell them that they've achieved a success. Reflection. Notice that they have some difficulty. Notice that they are feeling worried, apprehensive, frustrated, and then legitimize. Tell them it's okay to feel that way. It takes some time to feel more comfortable in this process. And then the last thing, support them. I will do everything I can to help you. You can count on me with your difficulties. I will help you solve them. And the last thing you can do to make this process effective is support self-management. So instead of giving them homework, instead of telling them what they should do next, ask them what they want to do next. What is it that you want to do after this training session to strengthen your knowledge? And the person tells you, well, I'm going to read this manual that you gave me. Okay, when are you going to read it? I think I'm going to need 1 week to read it. Okay, how likely is it, from 0 to 10, that you will read this manual in the next week? 3. Okay, so let's talk about it. How can we increase the likelihood? What is it that you think may stop you from doing it? Well, the manual is too long and I don't have much time because it's my kid's birthday and I have to organize it. Okay, so what could help you? Well, maybe let's make it 2 weeks. Okay, 2 weeks. How likely is it that you're going to do it within the next 2 weeks? I think it's 8. All right, so please tell me again what we have just agreed on. We agreed that I'm going to read the manual within the next 2 weeks. Perfect, thank you. After 2 weeks, I follow up and offer support if it didn't work for them. If you use these techniques, if you remember about embodied cognition, if you remember about situated cognition, and most of all about distributed cognition, so learning from the body, with the space and through the space, and with and among other people, you can create the benefit of a group mind. And the group mind, there are some stereotypes that the group is not very intelligent, that the group is always less intelligent than individuals. That's on the contrary to what research shows. Research shows that a group is always more intelligent and smart and has better memory capacity than every individual in this group. Because nobody can remember everything, nobody can understand everything, and nobody can have all the best ideas. But as a group, you can remember more, understand more, and have more ideas. One thing that happens in a group that doesn't happen when you're learning individually are cognitive loops. Somebody brings something to the table, somebody else takes it, processes it, brings back something else, something new, somebody else takes it, and we kind of, use this knowledge as a material that we can toss at one another, rework, toss back, and maybe come up with a new material. This is the greatest benefit of working together. And you know what? I would like to benefit from this group mind today. So there is one last thing I would like you to do. Look at the person next to you. And now think for a moment, if there is someone next to you. If not, maybe you can turn around, there is surely someone behind you. Share with this person one thing in the next minute or so that you're going to take home from this presentation. Can you do it for me now? Is that a Q&A? That's a Q&A between you. That's perfect. That's perfect.
We have some questions, yes.
Okay. So because we have some questions, let me interrupt your discussions and encourage you to continue when you leave the room for the coffee break. Get your phones ready if you want to check out my sources. Here they are. If you want to take a photo, feel free to do that. And this is me. Feel free to take a photo if you'd like to contact me for any of the areas that you see on this slide. Thank you very much. Keep learning.
Okay, so we have a few minutes and many questions. First question about the gossips. Those look like very impactful, what probably makes them dangerous. And the question is, gossip is absolutely destructive, and it takes weeks to clarify the message and to reduce the impact of the gossip if it was false. And usually, so comment, please.
Yeah, so of course there is, maybe I should have made it more clear, there is good gossip and bad gossip. By gossip, in the context of education, I didn't mean talking behind somebody's back and saying how bad person they are. I meant exchanging stories from your professional life, like this happened, that happened, I reacted in this way, somebody else reacted in that way. And I also don't really recommend following gossip, you know, by heart, following every word, but extracting some procedural knowledge from it. I do agree that a lot of gossip is damaging for the entire workplace, but if you listen carefully and critically, you can extract some procedural knowledge from gossip that you wouldn't be able to extract from a formal presentation. Always be careful, I do totally agree.
Second question. Wow, what amazing voice you have. Do you sing?
Thank you. Yes, I do. I'm a professional singer, songwriter, music producer. You can check out my music on Spotify or YouTube if you're interested in what I do. Thank you for asking.
Now?
Sorry? But then you wouldn't recognize it. I'm a niche artist. My most popular song has 2,000 views on YouTube, so you know. Thanks.
How would you deal with cognitive load from the brain perspective? How to lower the cognitive load?
I would serve less knowledge, and I would say that the fundamental rule for learning is always less is better. If you give somebody the whole cake, they're not gonna eat it. It's better to give them a minor piece of cake. And this is what is happening in modern education, like, I mean, Montessori contexts. They will give you very little knowledge, a slight portion of knowledge. And when you consume it, you, a child who has great cognitive capacity, you're ready for more, you're curious for more, you get more. I know that in business settings, we sometimes feel that pacing is important, that time is important, and we try to squeeze too much into one session because we feel, okay, it has to be done. It's a waste of time. When you have an onboarding procedure that is 5 days, 8 hours every day of non-stop theory learning, 98% of it will be gone by the end of the week. It's much better to extend the onboarding process to 3 months, give the trainees a 2-hour training session once a week, let them act on it, let them use it practically, come back to you with questions, and add another portion of knowledge. Pacing is more important than speed. I hope that answers your question.
If not, the person can always find you, I guess, after
Of course.
the test, right? Do you have any advices on how to encourage people in silo individuals to share knowledge with other team members? How to encourage people in silo individuals to share knowledge?
Start with why, as Simon Sinek said. People do things when they feel they have a reason to do them. And it has to be their personal reason. It has to satisfy their need. It has to solve their problem. If it's imposed, people will be reluctant. But if they know from the heart why they are doing it, how they are benefiting from it, they will be more likely to share.
So maybe the last question will be, do you see any impact of remote working on sharing knowledge, learning, and all those things?
Yes, of course. I can see that it's become much more difficult because when we are not gathered at the office, when we can't see each other, it's more difficult to exchange knowledge. One tip will be easier to do, one tip will be more difficult to do. I'll start with the difficult one: meet more often. If there is a possibility, if you're organizing a training session for your employees, let it be an in-person training session instead of online. When I go to companies to deliver, for example, a public speaking training, my role has changed from before the pandemic to now, from an instructor to a facilitator. Basically, what I do right now is get people to exchange their ideas because this is what they expect and this is what they see as the greatest value of the training meeting. The simple tip, when you have an online session, please make sure that all your microphones are on, that you don't mute your microphones, because this will encourage more interaction, because when you have a thought, an idea you want to share, you don't have to make 5 actions before you actually share it, and in the meantime, somebody else is talking already, so you think, I didn't make it in time. Make sure that the microphones are always on, and cameras too. I know it's inconvenient, but the communication flow is much better when you can see the person on the other side.
We run out of time. If you have, we have more questions, but please find Patrycja somewhere and then talk directly. Thank you so much, Patrycja, for the talk.
Thank you. Thank you so much.